You've heard him. You love him. A voice that has peppered your memories. For 2 nights, July 11th and 12th, Dave Barnes plays Brother Bring the Sun, the 11th, and What We Want, What We Get on the 12th, in their entirety with a band. Come experience joy, laughter, and the beauty of music. We'll see you there.
Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of the song, or the work tape. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born. Recorded by Lonestar, Clay Walker, Rodney Atkins, Chris Young, Reba McIntire, Vince Gill, and Donna Summer, to name a few. Today we're going to discuss a #1 hit song that was nominated in 2012 as Single of the Year at the ACM Awards. It's called Tommorrow by Chris Young. This is one of my favorite dudes to hang out with and get a beer with and smoke a cigar with. Welcome, Anthony Smith.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. I'm so glad we could get this worked out and figured out. I wanted to start with you. I know a little bit about your background, but I want, for our listeners, you have a pretty unconventional background as it pertains to songwriting and how you got into songwriting,
right.
Especially like in the country music world.
Right.
So take us back. What kind of music did you grow up on? When did you catch the bug?
I grew up mainly on R&B pop side of things. And I, like most people, actually thought all the artists wrote their own songs. And I remember, trying to write songs or just making up is what I call it, things as early as like the 9th grade. And from that point on, it was just something that I did. I really never thought of it as a career or, I would just sit down and write stuff just because it was popping in my head and I liked making it up, and so it just never stopped popping in my head, I guess.
Right. So you're in 9th grade and you start writing songs. Before that, what was music to you before you started writing? Like when you were a kid?
It was listening to stuff. I played trumpet in, high school and favorite thing I played in a little band somewhere along in there. So I was always making music. Our church had a big choir. There was all those things around. So I was always around it somewhat. My mother, she played piano and gave the kids piano lessons. But when they got to me, they hated it so much she didn't make me take them. She sold the piano. So, and I was the one that ended up going into the music industry.
So how did you get into trumpet? What was that about?
Trumpet was just joining the marching band and actually thought, I remember the first day that I would play drums and they had too many drummers, so they suggested trumpet. So I ended up doing that and I ended up getting pretty good at it. And I had music scholarships going into college, majoring in as a performance major in the beginning with the trumpet.
Yeah. So, okay. It's funny because I played trumpet in junior high school also in band because they didn't have any room.
Yeah.
In percussion.
Yeah.
I didn't stick with it. I wasn't very good. But I'm interested how trumpet, and you got really good at that, but how did that lead into or inform you as a songwriter? Like where was the connect, or where was there was a pivot in, okay, I'm going to go from trumpet jazz or whatever you were doing
Right.
into writing songs for people?
Well, that happened. I wanted to be a jazz trumpet player in a big band. That's what I thought.
Okay.
So that was my goal. And writing songs just came in between. When I switched my major to composition and arranging. So writing songs just came in between having to write things for, say, the 19-piece jazz band or an orchestra piece for, 63-piece orchestra or chamber orchestra in the style of different composers like Bach, Stravinsky, Beethoven, and you would do that, and they would have to have these particular styles. So when I made up stuff, I liked it because I didn't have to follow those boundaries and those rules. I could just play anything and sing anything. And the pivots came when I was going to graduate school, going to go to Eastman School of Music, and we had a scholarship, but we needed more money. So we go, where do we get more money from? And my friend says, oh, I know, we'll go sell some songs. Some of these songs we've been writing. So sell some songs is what I thought we were doing to get to graduate school.
Okay.
And I got a song recorded when I was, senior in college. And so I never got to graduate school. And I wound up, I kept thinking I was going to quit and go, but I kept getting more writing opportunities and, got the bug. And I had the bug from that. The Muscle Shoals Horns, they did a record and they cut that song. And they were also playing on a lot of sessions in Nashville. So when they would come to town, I'd go to the studios and hang out with them. And that's what I really just fell in love with, production and seeing how all that was put together. And, when I got a song recorded, that changed it to, I know there was something to do with these songs. Up until then, I was just writing them.
What did that feel like? So you had been arranging and you've been working with Muscle Shoals horns.
Yeah.
And you were just taking jobs doing that, and then explain the first time you wrote for somebody. Like, what was that like? What did it feel like? Was it odd to you?
Well, when I got the song recorded, it came through a publishing company, Combine EMI, and so I could drive back up, and they started, asking me to bring in songs to play. So I would drive up from Shoot Hook in college about every 6 weeks, 2 months, come up and bring some songs to this publishing company. And they would, they'd always like one or two of them, it'd never be 1 and 2 or 3. It would be like 4 and 6 or 5 and 7, the odd ones that you thought weren't very good. And the first ones would generally, looking back on it, be too complicated because you've just got a lot more.
You're overthinking or whatever.
You just put too much music in it. You come from that scene where, they say, you play music, you play 3 chords and 4 chords, to tens of thousands of people. In jazz, you play tens of thousands of notes to 25 people.
Right. So
you were just used to a lot of music, and you did it, and just learning to simplify it. And then that's when I started making a lot of traction on the songwriting side, which is what I was still trying to do because that was going to be to help fund me going into graduate school. That was still on my mind.
Okay.
That's the reason I was doing it. And once I was in a publishing company, at least had a relationship with them where I could bring songs to them, and then having one recorded, and whoever you're writing with, they're trying to get them recorded and that kind of thing. So that brought in another high or something I was completely unaware of,
Right.
a feeling that you could get something done and completely unaware of it. And then with a competitive spirit, you want to try to win.
Sure.
You want to try to do that. And so I got really kind of caught up in that and trying to, meeting other songwriters and people that had written great songs that I knew and loved. And you would meet them and it humanized it for you. Like, hey, man, these guys did it, so they're human.
Right.
So it would make it like that, and you're around them. And it, you start getting, like, I would like to do that too. Can I write a song that good?
Yeah.
To get, to be a hit, to get something done with it, or just to work among the people that you admired and thought were really great.
Yeah.
And you could see the level of of talent that they had. So that really gets you going, because even if you're gonna make it to graduate school, you would have to write some good songs to make any money. And so you just got caught up in that dynamic.
Okay, so you said you didn't make it to graduate school because you got so immersed in the songwriting world?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, absolutely. And little did I know the struggle was going to take up all my time. I had no idea. I thought it'd be like, I'm picking them up, easy going. I mean, between, starving, driving back home to get stuff and, all of those things, the songwriting, once you jump over there, unless you have a hit, it's a struggle.
Let's talk about that struggle for a second. So sometimes people on the outside will look at a song or hear a song on the radio and go, I could write that.
Yeah.
That sounds easy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You hear
there
that all
are
the time.
Some of the best songs in the world sound easy.
Easy.
Maybe explain to some of those people the process of writing a song and how long did it take you in that struggle to finally, you got some cuts and whatever early on, but cuts don't, there's a level of success with cuts, of course.
Right.
You're like stepping stones.
Right.
But once you hear a song on the radio that you had something to do with, that probably feels different.
Very different.
And the struggle is then realized and offloaded.
Yeah.
But you continue on. So maybe explain to people in a way that they can understand songwriting's not easy.
Oh, it is definitely not easy. And one of the hardest things to do is what you just said, is writing something that seems simple but is brilliant.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what to leave out, what to put in, and it takes a lot of discipline to edit yourself and edit it in such a way that the message still comes through, but you only have 3 minutes to do it.
Right.
Or less. And so you really got to do a lot of editing. And what I love about it is a lot of times in songwriting and in things, there are words you leave out of phrases that if it was a complete sentence, they would have to be there. But you can leave them out because it sings better and everybody gets the line and everybody gets the message.
The idea, yeah.
And you have to know how to do that. They don't even miss it unless you were trying to recite it.
Sure.
And so you wouldn't even miss it when it's done right. And so you have to learn those type of things in addition to, work on your craft. Let's just say you have the talent, but then the craft comes into play and you have to learn the craft as well as the competition, the people that are crafting them, not comparing yourself to anybody or anything like that, except for comparing yourself to people that get cuts, get publishing deals, get hits, and people that don't.
Right.
So that's a comparison. You want to be as good as a person who is doing that.
What does the talent look like? Like, I know it's changed over the years, but generally speaking, you say you start with the talent and then you move into crafting. So without the craft, what does the talent look like just on a general level?
Well, the songs I was writing them all by myself. So I didn't even know about co-writing, of course, till you get to around co-writers and things like that. But that was there. And what happened with the first song is occasionally, you hear people say a lot, they wrote some, they got stuck, and in writing, there's probably going to be a certain part that'll pop in your head the moment you're inspired by an idea or whatever. And then you will need the craft to make that better and to finish it out, or it's stuck. You don't know, you may have to dig around over here. This just flowed out and made sense. And that was the first song that flowed out in its entirety that got recorded.
Right.
So, and instead of just, it's the difference in doing something, knowing how to do it, and just stumbling up on it.
Right.
And in the beginning, I think we all stumble up on it. We practice till we get something right. And when we do, then we try to learn what we did, because creators tend to like their stuff. So you have to get past that and learn that you can like it. Just because you like it doesn't mean it can't be improved upon. You can like a great song just as much as you can like a not great song.
Can you write a song that you don't like?
Yes, you can.
Have you done that?
I don't mean that you. I think you can write them and listen back and realize you didn't get that right. You didn't nail it. And we moved so fast.
I think what I mean, I'm going for like in a co-write, for example, or sometimes you'll get, once you get into the business part of it, sometimes you'll get like prompted by your publisher or somebody who says, hey, we need a song like this.
Yeah.
Especially in the sync world. Like we need a song like Willie Nelson on the Road Again.
Right.
But it can't be too on the nose.
Yeah.
Can you write as, that feels like work to me. That feels like I don't want to do that. Some people are really good at that. I'm not good at that. But so I guess my question is more geared that way. Can you write a song you don't like for work?
I think you can. And I wouldn't say like you don't like, but it might be, you might not love it, or it might not relate to you at all. Put it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I mean, like, just like if you crafted something for a synchro, writing songs, I've had songs hit by people that I never doing around because I don't like the way I sound doing them, for one thing.
Sure.
And secondly, it was just a manufactured idea, not anything that had happened at all. So you always have that difference. I always think of songwriters as being in 3 categories, and one is you write about what you know or what you've been through and experienced. The other one could be like that one, plus you write about things you've observed. Say you never been married or went through a divorce, but you've observed that, and you can write a song with a certain kind of emotions that people who have been will relate to that. But you personally have not been through that. And the third kind can just sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and fluffy house shoes and write a song about falling in love in Mexico and never been to Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a mark of a great storyteller.
Yeah, that's
they
just
never experienced it.
Right. That's those kind of things. And in doing some of that, you will have some songs, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. Sometimes what you think is your best song doesn't get recorded or doesn't become a hit, and sometimes what you think is just okay ends up being recorded. And as a friend and I said, well, when you get one of those lighthearted or ditties, as they call them, recorded, what are you supposed to say? Hey, don't put that one out, put this one out.
Yeah.
You let them do, it fits, they do it, you have it. So there's a certain amount of that in there, just coming along with the craft of learning how to really craft an idea and, let it go where it's taken itself, and you can guide that, but you don't have to put in things that you would say, if I was in that situation, I'd do this. You can say, this song is in this situation. What's best for this song?
Right.
And you can, you do that kind of thing like that. So there's always a certain amount of that.
Is that how you came into country music, or was country music kind of always on your radar? Were you a fan? Because you came up in like R&B, pop.
I did. And that first song was really more R&B, but the publishing company that they were doing the deal with was country.
Okay.
So, I got the song cut, and I had the guy who was producing the record. He had called he owned part of the publishing company as well, and he had called the president of the publishing company and told him I was going to come over and play him some songs. I don't know what all they told him, but I do know when I got there, he said, I got this talking to, which is, hey, so-and-so called me, him. Yeah. I just want you to know something. Around here, somebody's got to be in charge. I run things, and while over there with the publishing company, I run this. And that song you wrote was good. If you can learn how to do a country song as well as you can learn how to do that, I think you can make a living in this business. All right, thank you. Dismissed. So it was like, wow, what was that?
Yeah.
So, and I really felt like I had made a terrible mistake moving to Nashville. By this point, I've moved. And it's still going to take a year before graduate school. I'm still going to be that trumpet player, But like I said, you get caught up in the fight. You got to fight, you got to win. So I realized for me, there were country songs that I liked and others that I did not relate to. And I said, okay, I'm not going to be a great guy to write a song about a farm because I don't know anything about a farm. But if we're writing about love or heartbreak or, falling in love, falling out of love, beers, alcohol, people getting drunk, all the things. There were subjects that I realized that you could do. And got to the point where I could do those about as good as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other ones, that I didn't. One of my first collaborators, I wrote a song, and he had a line in there, not much to look at, my work shirt and cat hat. And I said, "What's a cat hat?" And he was like, "Oh, CAT, caterpillar." I go, "Man, did we just put that in the song? I had no idea."
Yeah.
But it sounded like a good line to me, and we did it. So you would have moments like that. But if you were coming, because either you bring the idea, or once you collaborate with somebody else brings the idea, and if somebody else would bring it, either way, I could always start with the music. I could always hear an idea, and a melody would pop in my head, and so I would just do it, play it, get it, and see if the room liked it, and if they did, now we have a roadmap of what we're doing.
Right.
And we're creating with the same melodic thing, and that. So I think just. Once I got here, and I remember getting on the phone to a New York publisher. I talked my way into another one using EMI's long distance, mind you. And so I told him, I said, "Man, I have screwed up. I said, I have moved into this town. This guy don't listen to nothing but country music." And they call his name, and I go, "Do you know him?" And I go, "Oh my God, I'm going to lose this damn job. I can't believe it." I said, "Do you know him?" And so, he said, "No, but I know of him." And I hung up. He said, "Send me songs." I didn't, because I realized that was something that I was missing. And now we know what it is. It was, these people are achieving tremendous success. And in that community, when you do that, whether you met the person or not, they have a reputation of doing that. And this guy knew him from that. And so, and I didn't, I hadn't put it together. And I thought I should probably just keep working and keep thinking and trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I did.
So you mean you didn't have like an immediate connection as far as co-writing goes? Like it was a struggle to get in there and get something done, or?
Well, a guy passed a guy in the hall one day. He says, "Man, what do you do? Lyrics or melodies?" I said, "I do them both, but melodies usually come faster." And he says, "Well, I'm just a lyricist. Let's get together." And we did. He became my first collaborator. We had some cuts. And the thing I remember, and we'd have, arguments, emotional fights and everything. He was a fast writer. So if you were writing something, he'd just give you a whole verse. And then if you liked it, if you didn't, by the time he'd have another one. And one day our biggest fight came when he goes, "Hey, I've written 6 verses, pick 2." And we were, laughing about that kind of stuff. And also you become a better lyricist just in the fact that once you've established a melody, you're at the second verse. It helps to be able to chime in and take the second verse to another place, as opposed to just sit there going, "Well, I've already written a melody." So you learn better. And second verses generally are tougher than first verses to keep the interest going and get the listener back to the chorus.
Right.
So, it just one thing and then the other. And, start seeing the songwriting get somewhere. And that bug, once that, it became... you were so caught up in the challenge of trying to do it for all kinds of reasons that you realize actually, I was good at it, and
right.
I didn't even know that part. And I'm way better. I was a good trumpet player, but there's probably ones that would have, eaten my lunch. And
Sure.
With songwriting, I could compete and get things in the publishing company right along with the guys that were getting the cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell pretty quick if you have chemistry in a co-write or not?
I can. You can.
It's kind of like, I feel like sometimes it's like, it's kind of like a first date versus a second date. Like maybe you should give it another try. We should do one more and see if it clicks.
Yeah, and the techniques, the approaches, people have different techniques, different approaches, but you can tell sort of if it's going to be one that you guys can do things together, because you can both be excellent track record guys, but he sees this idea as a brick home. You see it as a log cabin. So you won't be coming at it from the same place until you get mature enough to pick the best one to see what happens, And after you get, a few hits under your belt, things like that. You know it, the other person knows it. And you're also open to, wow, that's fresher. I never looked at it like that. Or them, vice versa. Wow,
Yeah.
man, that's cool. You see that, you get developed enough to where you can hear an idea and you've already seen the exact straight ahead way to do it. But you are also starting to experiment with, okay, I've done that, or okay, that's good. What could make this fresh?
Right.
What's another angle?
Yeah.
And you find other ways to do it, and that becomes really great. Just that. And so if you're in there with somebody that can help you do that, you will know, because your things will be exciting them, and they will be exciting you as the song goes on down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about, as someone who's been doing this for a long time, is when, as an established writer, let's say you're an established writer, the pub deal,
Yeah.
you've got a couple hits, whatever. At what point, if at all, do you take a chance on a writer who's up and coming, who doesn't have anything to offer you but their talent? Does that happen? And
Well, I used to, and still do for the most part, base that on if they're coming from a publisher that I know, sign a new person, or one of the PROs call you about a new person, somebody, or if you just happen to see it. But generally speaking, it was a new person. If that when a person's finally caught their attention and gotten a pub deal, doesn't mean that they're a successful writer yet.
right.
So if they've gotten in and gotten that far, and somebody goes, "Hey man, you need to check this out," I was usually open at checking it out. And another thing I've always done was, when you get on that, it's like your treadmill, your lane, doing stuff. You tend to do a lot of things that, a certain way, or get real focused so that you can finish the task or whatever it is. If you're producing, whatever it is. And if things get really stagnant, I open myself up, and my new answer becomes yes. If somebody calls, "Anthony, do you want?" Yes. "Anthony, I'll try it." Yes. "You want to go to the?" Yes. I'll just say yes till I extract enough things that I have to do. And then now you're working and you got it again. And now you got a workload that you have to do. And you got things already happening with co-writers, collaborators, situations. So I would do that. But I would laugh, because in my head, every time I needed to turn a corner, my new answer would become yes. Because we get smart and we think we know all these things, and you do. You improve your skill set, but the more you learn, the more you realize there is to know, and you don't know nearly as much as you think you do, but you do know a lot.
Yeah.
And also, there's room in there always for trying different things, So I just had that conversation last night with Chris Young.
Okay.
About, hey, what you think and you do,
Yeah.
versus, I might not be the smartest guy. I've made, mistakes, but your wins, when they way outpace the failures,
Mm-hmm.
your instincts are right. Nobody's going to get it totally 100% of the time, but it's worked more than not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the world is changing fast.
World is changing fast. The industry is changing fast, has changed completely to a different model. And it's incredible. It's like the Wild West,
Yes.
because things can happen out of nowhere.
And that's why I asked that question, is because, and just to lean into it a little bit more, if I'm a new writer, but I have talent, I don't have a deal yet. I'm trying to get in the door. I meet Anthony Smith at the bar or whatever. What do you say to that writer?
Well, for the most part, I'm probably not going to write with them. It's too many.
Why? That's what I'm getting at.
It's too many. It's too many people.
Too many people
in that situation.
Okay.
And you can't do that, any more than you could. Let me pick your brain and sit around and talk to all of them. You just don't have the time to do that and earn a living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so many people till even now that publishers run the calendar of the writers. They won't even let things like that be on your book. You can do it in the evenings if you don't have anything, if you're really into them, or the weekend or something like that. But at the same time, they will, if they really are truly talented, you'll see something starting to pop off for them. People will start talking about them. You'll hear a song that blows your mind, you know, something like that. But
they've got to be busy. They've got to be doing it.
Yeah, it's, you know, because if they do, it will be great. Otherwise, you're just writing in there watching you, but they can't contribute to the level that they need to contribute. Now, if they can, that's a whole nother deal. And also, they're going to be getting noticed by not just you, other writers that you know, publishing companies, PROs, you know, before they get signed, they're going to be getting, somebody's going to be hearing and go, this guy has an edge. This guy has something, or this girl has something that's very unique and special about it, the way they do. And then they listen to see what else they're doing. Is it keeping them coming? Are they putting themselves in business? Are they putting themselves out there? Because all of that makes a difference between getting in rooms. If you get in a room and you don't know what you're doing yet, say, you know, with an established artist and, you know, two other great writers, that room is going to move so fast till everybody can tell right away if the line is right, move on, or hear the great ideas or throw the other ones out or improve them. And if you don't have a person in the room that can do that, they can't stay on the train like that, you know? Yeah.
Sounds like you had experience in that.
Yeah. I mean, they can't, you know, they just can't. And actually,
I've been that person before, for sure.
Yeah. And actually, you know, you understand now. I used to do the same thing, just ask anybody all the time, and I didn't know why. But then as I started getting somebody would take a chance on you, and you start getting, you know, some cuts, something you could talk about.
It's kind of like if you're a real estate agent and you book a showing of a house you need to sell to someone who has no interest in selling or buying it, rather.
Yeah, you know, and some people, you know, I've heard it put so many ways. They don't know what they don't know.
Sure.
Or, you know, they'll be dragging the process down thinking they need to be looking at 2 lines in the first verse and you're down to the last 2 lines in the bridge. And they're still stuck up there. And it goes like, hey, man, if we 2 other hit songwriters and yourself, you know, sometimes you have to trust the other side. They have to learn to trust you. Yeah. Maybe you're on fire that day and they have to let that happen. Maybe somebody else is on fire, or maybe all 3 of y'all is an equal contribution. It could be any number of those things, you know. And when somebody else is, your role in the room switches to each, you know, grabbing, making it better, or add on down here, or do that. But if somebody gets on fire with one, whatever it is, you know, I call it every once in a while, our ultimate co-writer, God, just touches us on the shoulders, and he's in the room with you. Yeah. And this song is falling out, and you know the difference when they're great falling out versus not, because we've all had both of those experiences, and sitting there like we didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. You know, words, I can't think of any words, as opposed to bam, here you go. So yeah.
Which kind of leads me, I do want to talk about this song tomorrow, but I want to mention this real fast. So there's the difference between the songwriting craft and having success as a songwriter, and then it being a business. How does the business interrupt the craft?
Does the business interrupt the craft? The business can interrupt the craft.
Which is, so it's just like this little seesaw thing, or balancing act of like, which one is better? Which one's more important? You as someone who's making your living on songwriting, how does the craft inform that? And then does the business take away from that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And I think, you know, it's a couple of different ways to look at that. Yes, the business can take away from it in the beginning, but if you're going to get anywhere, it is the business you're in. So it behooves you to understand it and start getting good at that. And then you have to compartmentalize that when you go in and start creating. And just not, you know, because you might be trying to write specifically down one road and this song may not go down that road. And you have to trust that and go on down the road you're going. But you're going to have to deal with the business one way or the other to get anywhere. So you might as well embrace it and try to figure it out sooner than later. Now, you don't have to spend all of your time doing that. You have to spend time doing that balance of, here I am completely free, created, let's do this, or man, I need to do this because so-and-so's looking, or I need to do this because this is that, or I need to go have another meeting with a publisher or a label or whatever. It's all kind of in there.
Yeah.
It all kind of starts to run together because, particularly now more than ever, because there's so many camps. And you have to know politically how to be in them, how to get there. These are the conduits between you and success. Even if you have a hit song. And how are you going to know that? Unless it gets put out and become a hit song.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the song is no good, it's still those same conduits exist. So the sooner you realize it's not going anywhere and you embrace it, I think the better off you will be.
Did you ever get in your head about, I've got to make this right. I've got to make this so correct so that it can sell versus like your artistry. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a couple of ways to think about that. As a person writing and producing, art gives way to, as my wife said, the last three letters in chart. That's art. And so once you're on the charts, art becomes the last three letters in chart. Nobody wants to talk about art anymore.
Okay, yeah.
Art becomes chart, your publisher, your paychecks, your house, food on the table. So as art sort of goes, alone out the window. But I even think if you're thinking art, it still has to be. A guy said this to me the first time about publishing, and I didn't understand what he was saying. He was critiquing some songs, and I was first starting to bring him up, and I had a cut. So he was like, well, either you can hang on your Eiffel Tower and just do it your way, or you can learn to take constructive criticism and make these other ones and, get on track with that. And I didn't know what he was saying, but he was exactly right, because the business model today, let's just fast forward to like today, a lot of people think they need to write the songs that they're putting out. So they come to town, they want to be a singer and a songwriter because they see everybody else doing it. And also they have all the social media stuff to keep up with. And so they're, big things coming soon in the post, or here's a song I wrote yesterday. Should I put it out? Should I drop it? They'd be a lot better off to just learn how to write great songs or learn how to be a great singer, whichever one that you really need to. You need to, once you get in the door, you actually really need to be able to deliver. I mean, if you're going to be on the football team, you got to catch the football or you can't be on the team. Mm-hmm. It's like this. Mm-hmm. If I throw it to you, you got to catch it.
Right.
You got to punch it in from the 2-yard line if you're a running back, or you can't be on my team.
Right.
So you get like that, the things that you want to do, it will tell you what you have to do to get there or to be a part of those kinds of things, And I think, and once it all sort of keeps trading places from when you first creating, man, and then you got one that people liked, or then you get one that was published, one that was recorded. Once you get one that's a hit, that becomes your new standard, say, and you want to feel that again. So immediately, that's what you're going for, because if you do this right, somebody's going to record it. You need those vehicles for it to get out. So you start riding on that vehicle, not necessarily, I got to make it so perfect or anything, but you really need to feel like when you leave that room, you guys nailed it. And then that will go all the way down the line. If you're tracking it with live guys, you'll hear them talking about it. They're talking about it. Other publishers talking about it, that from their writer who's on it. If people, we hear a lot of things, we see a lot of things, but when something starts to turn your head or keep your attention, that's when you start to know that one has something going for it.
Yeah,
and
right.
You don't know what it is, but it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you continue writing songs if it wasn't paying you? Do you love it that much?
Would I continue writing songs if it wasn't paying me? Well, I produce, I write songs.
I know that's a loaded question, and it's just
well, I was just going to say this. Being a producer, being a guy who's run companies, being a guy who manages a band and got his hands in a lot of things, I just switch them around. So that on this particular day, all the things I do may not have anything to do with the song or writing a song. Or if I'm going to the studio days, even though you're recording songs you wrote, but that doesn't really have anything to do with songwriting, but it's another energy.
Sure.
And you just try to do that. I'm so conditioned to working in an environment where there's an end game. Whether I would sit around and do that or not, I don't know, because I have other things that could take over. You might want to enjoy managing more full time. You might want to, start back producing more, or maybe you sign 2 or 3 writers and you like them, and now you're the guy with the skill set and with the knowledge, and you have these new writers on fire. You can guide their careers, and you have a company, and you could do things with that. Your energy might pour more into that, than just do it. But I think at the end of the day, I would write some. I mean, things have to happen and inspire you, I think, to write, because I hear guys that, didn't do the business side or don't do, and some of them were super successful songwriters and are doing excellent financially, and they just write for themselves.
Sure.
They like to still write, and they'll do things just to keep them busy. But the ones that were this and had a hand in business, they tend to expand one or the other. They tend to, if this is doing it, you've always got something to work on, to expand, to grow, to adapt to. And then this over here, so that you've got other things to do if you don't feel like writing, or if you're not writing for something specifically, you've got other things to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Let's talk about, you mentioned Chris Young a few minutes ago.
Right.
Let's talk about the song that we're going to talk about. It's called Tommorrow.
Yeah.
You wrote it with Chris Young and Frank Myers.
Right.
Maybe you can give us, paint a picture of the room that day. What did it look like? What ideas were popping off?
Well, I'll try to make it short. It's funny. Frank and I were sitting at Loser's Bar, of course, having a beer.
Of course.
And Gary Allen had a song called Today, and we're just sitting there, being smart, ourselves, and laughing and joking, going, that was a song about yesterday, it was a song about today, ought to be a song about tomorrow. And we're just laughing and being silly about it. And the next day, Frank and I were riding with Chris Young. So, he gets up and he starts noodling with it, and he calls me, and I'm at the gym. And I said, man, I can't hear you. So I leave the gym, go get my shower early, and roll on into town. And we just start kicking around the idea before Chris got there, and trying to find some shape to that one and another song. And he dug right in that song, and we, finished it off. But that's where the idea came from, as sitting around, jaded, talking smack at a bar, drinking a beer, and just having fun.
Yeah.
And then we go, hey, this could really be something. I do that a lot. Think of stupid stuff, think it's stupid. But you go, hey, that could be something. We better write this down. We do that sometimes,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a second and listen to the original Worktape that you brought, and then we'll kind of unpack it a little bit. This episode of Worktapes is brought to you by Eastside Music Supply. Eastside Music Supply is a music shop in Nashville, Tennessee. It's my go-to spot for all things gear related, whether it's guitars, bass guitars, if I need work on my gear, if I need to buy a pedal that's really cool and awesome, that's super unique, they've got that kind of stuff there. They've got cool merch, audio gear, all the stuff. You're dealing with the best people in the industry, unlike those big box stores that don't really care. Eastside Music Supply cares. They cares about your tone. They care about your experience. Go to eastsidemusicsupply.com. If you're not local to Nashville, they will hook you up. Tell them when you go that Brandon from Worktapes sent you. Okay, cool. Here's what I took from this Worktape, which I didn't realize, because I'm not, I'm not someone who goes real deep into modern country.
Right.
But I realized Chris Young can sing. He's a real singer.
Right.
Because you can hear it in the Worktape.
Right.
A lot of times in production, you don't really know if an artist can really pull their,
Chris,
pull their weight vocally.
Right. And the funniest thing, when we were laying that song down, and he was just we ran it through a couple times, and he sang the last chorus because his vocal was a little tired or whatever. So he was singing it down an octave just to sing it. And I said, man, you ought to do that. He said, what? I said, you ought to start this third chorus an octave lower and then go back up. I said, you've got the range to do it. You can do it. He goes, you think? I said, man, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
But it was just him kind of mumbling through it instead of screaming in the room, just singing a low chorus. And we ended up being that on the for his record. You know? Yeah. Because he could do it. He had the range to do it.
He kills it.
Yeah.
He kills it. And it just made me realize, like, oh, he's a great vocalist.
Yeah, he is.
He's got
really
the chops.
Yes, he does.
You mentioned that this idea came kind of playfully.
It did.
Was any of it from experience? Once you got down to like the
Once
root
we
of what
got
the song
down
is?
to it, we could all relate to that scenario.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could tap into that emotion or all relating it to that particular scenario. Here's this thing. And you try to get the right lines in there that'll really carry it through the song. And in that case, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned to me earlier when we were prepping for this that you were invited to go work on the recording of the song, like the full production.
Right. Yes.
Do a lot of writers get that opportunity?
No. But, you know, one of the things that got me cuts was I was really good in the studio. And that's demo will sound a lot like the record.
Yeah.
And I've gotten that call a few times. I've gotten calls to, hey man, who did those backgrounds? Hey man, I've gotten those calls and to do that because man, you make it sound like a hit for them. But no, and I was honored to do it. And the funny thing when I got there, you know, James Stroud, the guys were running it down and they were changing the intro tremendously all around, which I wasn't gonna say a word.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, hey, you got him running there and they brought me in. So the last thing I'm going to do is screw up my own song. If he thinks it's cool, I think it's cool. But he kept saying, now, boys, that demo sounds pretty good. He goes, Anthony, what's that? Is that an Ebo? I said, yeah. He goes, get your Ebo out. Get the Ebo out, sitting up there with a cigar, and they were listening to it good, and they would just get up. They want to, it's a master scale now, and some of them are getting double, triple, whatever. They want to do all this stuff for them, show them how creative they are. And he was like, no, man, we're going to do this just like this. They sped it up a click and went back to the snare side stick and the second verse. And on my demo, I stayed on the snare because I usually am more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, put one extra pause in for the breakdown chorus, which we just roll right through it in time because the main difference between demos and records is budget. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have time. You didn't have time to sit there and go like, oh man, we can do this, and everybody just count a couple extra beats. You know, you go like, hey man, you got like 35 minutes to whip these babies out, and you got to make sure you get it. And being good at that and being able to communicate that's where my arranging and composition really came in, because I could communicate with the players. I could tell them what to do. I can read music. I can read the number system. I can write music. You know, write the number system. But they love that because you can articulate what you want. And they could play anything, but it helps when you articulate where you're going and what you're doing with it. But so, yeah, they did.
The other cool thing about this work tape is as you all just heard, like it starts off with just the guitar, but as the verses come in, I could immediately tell, and I've heard the song a time or two, like the full production over the years. But when I really focused in on the work tape you sent, I was like, oh, this is definitely a hit song. Like if I had never heard it before, it felt like, oh, this song has mass appeal. Whether it ever made it or not, it would have still been the same.
Yeah. You know, the two things about that's really funny is when we were doing it, did the work tape that we just got them on the downbeat with the guitar strumming. And when I got to the studio, I thought it'd be better to strum it. So, and Chris, we didn't know each other then that very much. That's our first write on things. And he goes, man, I'm sure glad you took the chunks out, you know, and just, and because you had other support from a band. So we just didn't have to go chunk. And Frank was out of town. But, and I demoed it after the flood that we had. I had this session on a Tuesday with 3 different artists on there, him being one, Love and Theft was another. And I can't remember who the other one was. I had a song on there with Dean Dillon. So it, you know, they were telling us we couldn't get back to Nashville. So I rented a car from Key West, drove up to Miami. All the planes were delayed. So I bought another ticket. And my wife said, I said, what do I do? She go, buy a ticket. So I bought another ticket. I got to Atlanta. I couldn't get out of Atlanta. And I was overnight stayed. And then I bought another ticket for a crop duster one out. I just needed to get home because my car was at the airport, and I was afraid that maybe it was flooded or whatever.
Right.
So, while waiting on this little plane to take off, that one of the big jets came in and said, "Oh, you guys are wandering around here with your guitars. We got 40 seats open, but it's at like gate 2, and I'm wandering around over that 46." So huffed it, got home, rode through the studio to see if the car was fine, to see if it was open. Am I going to be able to track this thing? With all these songs with these artists, it was a really important session to me to get home to. And everything was cool. Everybody could make it except for one guy. Chris could make it. Frank was in Florida on vacation. And we went in, and fortunately, it was the first top of the demo, so we did it. I had 2 songs with him on that demo. We did those and moved on. And but the studio was small, so I couldn't do any intro. We'd learn you couldn't get 6 or 7 musicians. You have to do it with 5 and then do the overdubs. Mm-hmm. So I did it with 5. And then I cut his vocals. And Chris is such a great singer. He used to ask me, like, "Do you think I need to do?" And I'd go like, "Yeah, whatever." He goes, "You're not going to tell me, are you?" I go, "I'll tell you to try different things, but it's not like I need to beat you in the ground. I mean, you're singing it from the get-go." And he was doing that. But when he left, is the day after, he had to go out on tour. And somebody was coming into that studio. I had to move it. Also, a possum had crawled into the return vent and died.
Oh, my God. No.
Nobody knew, so this studio was starting to stink up. Nobody could figure out what was going on. It's had a floating floor in there, under there, sponges. It's what's going on. And somebody noticed that every time the AC kicked on, they got that smell. Yeah. So this guy went out there, and it was a little crack in there, and he crawled up in there, and that was the cause of it. So I went to another studio, did the overdubs, and nobody was there. So I sent it off to Chris before I mixed it on that Saturday night, because I was going to mix that Monday. And so happened when I sent it off and he listened to it, he had one of the heads of Clear Channel on his bus out there that time. And they said, "If you don't put this out next, you're stupid." And he calls me up. He goes, "Dude, you started a fire. My label wants to put this out." But the shouts goes, "Wait." So that's how I got called in, because they wanted to go with that to do that. So that was an interesting turn. I'm glad I got back home, because some people were like, "Man, we're just going to stay." I go, "I've been down here a week. I don't want to stay in Key West anymore. I don't think I could even smell another drop of alcohol, much less drink it." So it was, I was, and word and getting home. And that was a good one to get home to.
Yeah. Well, it's a great song, obviously. You guys killed it. As we wrap up, or right before we wrap up, I just wanted to, you've been doing this for a long time. And this is an understatement to say that you've seen this industry change over and over again.
Right.
In those amount of years.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's going? Is it going in a good direction? Is it not going in a good direction? What are your thoughts on it right now?
Well, a couple of things. I think it's going in a good direction creatively. I think so. I think we have trouble with streaming actually paying what the song should be worth, which is so minuscule compared to terrestrial radio. But it's the on-demand part that people can get, listen to different things. And I think that is a thing that gets in the way of young artists trying to develop, because they think they should be putting something out and recording and writing, and but what you don't have in that kind of a thing is, there is no checks and balances. There's nobody to tell you this isn't good enough to be put out. That, like in a publishing company, you have the publisher that you got to get around, except for when you get to be great, just let you do whatever you want to. But they figured out that you can edit things and take it out. When you're out there independently, you're just putting things out. Nobody told you it wasn't good enough. You liked it. Maybe your immediate friends liked it. So nobody told them. But aside from the fact that streaming pays nothing near what it should, and when I was on the board of the Nashville Songwriter Association, we got the Music Modernization Act, which increased what we were getting by 50% over a 5-year period. And that was great. I'm on the Songwriters Hall of Fame board now, and we're still fighting those same battles. But the thing is, by the same token that a person can put something out and it's not good and they should spend more time being better at their craft than doing it, they also can put something out that could be good. It's the same highways that the major people are using and those things. And, case in point, as we were talking about earlier, I've been working with this band out of Houston called Telluride, and independent band. I ended up going in, cutting 3 sites on them, and one of them got added to 93Q, the largest radio station in Houston, and that's the 6th largest market, and a Billboard reporting station really added it. So other stations are adding it because of doing that, and it came in to media base on the charts. So some of those are going in addition to promote us for just around there, and I didn't see that happening.
Yeah. So radio is still a thing.
Radio is still a thing. Radio. I think for me, talking about radio totally going away is kind of like when Nashville slowed way down and they said that it was going to turn into Branson.
Mm-hmm.
I think radio will still have its place, but radio relies on the same, most of the time, on the same information or the same research being done at the streaming level. And all it actually really is a loss leader to get the artist booked. If an artist without radio can go out and get a big audience, man, they could be playing anywhere, because at the end of the day, that's what your song really does for an artist. It's your leader to put butts in the seats.
Yeah.
That's where you really make money.
Yeah.
But without that, they can't, but your music gets over there, and on an economic scale, probably one of the smallest parts of their income compared to the big things. But also, there have been a few phenomena that people have done without radio. Same thing, the streaming thing blew up. Anthony Oliver. There's been a few of those things to where it got out there, it did it. It brought him an audience, and it's brought some people audiences that they couldn't have if they were on a major label. No difference,
Yeah, there's a way to grow your audience now without
Zach Bryan would be a great
stuff,
example. Hundreds of millions of streams, playing stadiums without a real radio hit.
Yeah.
But that's lightning in a bottle.
But
if you say overall, that's catching lightning in a bottle.
I also think that some of the younger generation is looking at getting attention versus money right now. They want They want the numbers instead of the dollars.
Well, in the beginning, I just don't think you really sort of know that much difference, because even if you were just trying to get into a publishing company, you ain't gonna have no money anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you're just trying to figure out how to get. But whether you do that, and the way they've given them is, hey man, let's look at doing this. Put these out, make an impact over here. Get on TikTok, dude. That seems to be the way to some of them. And as opposed to trying to get a deal. But these days, man, deals work so great and so differently, to where there's collaborations. If you get out and you got that backing, as Cody Johnson did, you can come make a joint venture partnership with him. If you do all that research and you happen to put all those pieces into place and prove yourself as an act where you can do it, labels can come to the table and they'll just make you, like high-end booking agents. If you can sell 50,000 copies, Walmart can sell 3 million.
Yeah.
They could help push it that much further. But it's established that if people see you and hear your music, they're drawn to it.
Yeah.
It attracts people. You have an audience out there, so they can push it and find it. And you can have a lot of tools. I think it's great. I think learning how to use them is one thing. And when I know a lot of people, some I know as friends, some I don't, but they come into town, say don't live here, come in every, once a month or whatever, and write up something, record it while they're here, and release it. And they've got, minimal numbers, different things. But but they really haven't moved the dial for themselves because they have not gotten into higher collaborations or they have not written anything that would be great. It's not to say that they won't the very next time, or it's not to say that they wouldn't write it even by themselves that it jumps off.
Right.
But somebody somewhere in there, a lot of them don't have somebody to tell them that's not good enough. And
I think that's important. And it's interesting that I think that some, especially younger, like more maybe immature, culturally speaking, would take offense to that. What do you mean my songs aren't good enough to put out? What does that mean? Right. Well, we live in a society for the last 20 years or whatever that's like everyone gets a trophy for trying. Right. But and the real life is your song's not going to hit if it's not good.
It's just not good enough. And a lot of them singing it aren't good enough.
Right.
They're good. It's just okay. It's so much talent around this pool till you realize you're just okay. But, it'd be like running against somebody that can run a quarter of a mile, but before you can get halfway down the thing.
Yeah.
And professional athletes, they're just way, way better because they were built for that and they have trained to that. And you're not going to keep up that way. They can do it. I mean, I like playing golf, but nobody's going to pay me to play. I can guarantee that.
Yeah. See, I mean, you got to know where to draw the line for yourself. And is this something I enjoy or is this going to be a job?
Right. Because the thing about the job, when people ask all the time, I mean, anything that becomes a job is, you will enjoy it, but you are going to be frustrated and then you're not going in every day just smiling and being great because you realize by now as a job, you just can't go in and write what your dear heart feels off the top of your head if it's not great. And if you can't make it great, you can't even get that job, much less keep it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've had tons of co-writes where you wake up that day and you don't feel like writing.
Oh, yeah.
Just like any other job.
Yes, I think, the thing that really, really pushed it over for me is in the beginning, like people do when you have more time than connections or money, you sit around and get a lot of starts and dig for ideas, and then you get going, and then they slap you on a writing trip in L.A. someplace where you're meeting people you've never met, and you didn't have time to go get all these ideas. And once you ever go in a room and figure out, hey, man, I can go in here basically unprepared and make it happen.
Yep.
That's the thing that really sets you free because you're just freaked out up until that point. It's like, dear God, I didn't even have a chance to get an idea. Oh, my God, much less a start.
Right.
And you just go, and this is important. And you're just freaked out. And once you go into that and pull that off, you realize that it's in you. Mm-hmm. The well is deeper. You wouldn't make that a practice if you could, but you are going to come into situations where that's going to happen and you're going to do it. And as a matter of fact, new writers, a good thing to know is a lot of times when established writers are too busy and they're too doing this, if a guy's a lyricist and they get wind of the fact that he has a lot of great ideas, they'll pull him into these writes because they don't have one. That's his card for getting in. Mm-hmm. They can write it, and he can too, but they have that skill set. But a lot of people, I know, friends that was their calling card when they got signed to a place like Sony Tree and joint venture with another writer artist company that he started getting a call when the other guy who was the big guy would call and go, hey man, I got so and so, I ain't got no ideas, you got any ideas, why don't you come in and write with us?
Yeah.
And that became his calling card. But sit around and get good ideas and good hooks. And he was a great lyricist. But that becomes a calling card because you're going to be moving fast when you go, same as artists. After that first record, thereafter, if they're successful, they're moving fast. They don't have as much time as they had to write. And so when they show up, you need to have the goods because the person right down the street is going to have them. Oh, somebody's going to have them. And, the natural law of attrition is no matter how you think of it or no matter how you, love or don't, whatever, it's got to work or you have to move it into the hobby category. Mm-hmm. It's got to work, right. or you can't do it professionally and make a living.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, man.
Where can people find out about you? What do you got coming up?
Well, I like to keep things close to the vest, but I'll share a few things like this band I'm working with out of Texas, Telluride. Love those guys. We just started. I was introduced to them like last fall, and listened to their stuff, and they'd cut a song that I'd written like 10 years ago with a friend of mine. And she said, hey, this band cut this song. She sent it to me, and she said, what do you think about it? I said, it's terrible. And she said, oh, they need a producer. They could pay. I wish you'd take a meeting. And I was like, I don't know if I even have time to do this. But I met with him, liked him. We went in, cut, and they weren't terrible. It turns out that they were trying to record in some studio down there where, nobody knew what they were doing, including them, trying to play on it themselves and taking, months to complete 2 songs. And so, but their song, we cut it. It got on the radio down there in Houston, and now it's popping on other radio stations. And I manage the band, and their gigs are just going crazy. And that I really love. And also working with another friend of mine on a pop artist he's got an artist that's signed to Atlantic, New York. And we're meeting with this other artist on Thursday that I found that I think is great. And I think, she's 19 and great voice, right? She's written all of her songs by herself. Never collaborated yet. And the talent, I sent it to my friend, and it was just like, hey, man, wow. Dude, I think this is really cool. And so as you listen to all these new people, it's great when something does come across that fires you up and excites you. And so also in my production company, another artist named 40 Hayes from Mississippi, Irv Woolsey, Georgia's great manager that passed away last year, was working with him. So I got brought in to produce some sides on him. And we're working on that. Very excited. Always excited with sitting down, writing songs with signed artists, with Chris Young or Lee Brice or some of the new ones, Mayes's that I'm excited about. People that you do know, but that have deals. Yeah. They've already done the heavy lift. And so that's always a part of my workflow, in addition to producing, in addition to the business side. I'm talking to 2 other people about the management company I have. It's just myself, but we're thinking about 2 other people that structures it, and one of them manage a great big rap artist. He's got touring down. The other one's in Atlanta. It's done stuff in the hip hop and the Christian world, and it's won a couple Grammys. So we bring 3 different things to the table that we like, and we are in the process of structuring that as well.
That's
so it's
great.
always something.
You got a lot going on.
Always something.
And then you got to make room for hanging out with me at Red Door.
I got to make room for hanging out with you at Red Door. I got the wrong color cup, but I got it.
It's all right. At this point, I should have a sponsorship from
at this
Red
point,
Door.
Yes. We should have a retirement fund that they should be shaving off a little bit for us. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much.